So the market has been destroyed officially. We are down over 20% in the stock market. Essentially, be expected to hear some sort of news of a recession or stock market crash in the coming weeks. What does that mean for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? Well, we're going to discuss that and take a peek at what's to come in this week. I'm Crypto Neil. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for the subscription, and any comments that you leave are truly helpful for me to grow and provide the content that you need. Without further ado, let's check out Bitcoin and where I think we're heading in the coming week. So jumping on into Bitcoin on the daily time frame, as you can see, we've basically been in this same structure where we broke our major support, back tested it, tried to run up a second time, almost a third time, and now it looks like a certain chance of heading lower in the market. However, I do want to, before I go into Bitcoin's analysis, I just want to check in with other markets to kind of show you what's going on and paint a better picture of the overall stance of the market. So let's check on the NASDAQ first. We have had quite the negative drawdown. This is on a daily chart. I really don't see any merit in looking at anything less than daily or weekly for the NASDAQ or the S&P, just because stocks move a lot more slowly than Bitcoin. So we can measure against the time frames, basically looking at a larger time frame on stocks than Bitcoin to get similar movements. So here we have, from essentially top to bottom, 21% drawdown. We are looking at the definition of a stock market crash. Essentially, it hasn't really been confirmed or announced yet on the news, but I do think the likelihood of us hearing that is very, very soon. And when that happens, it is usually marking the bottom. Usually the news is the last place to deliver useful information for you as far as day trading goes, even investing, essentially, if you're just going to do the opposite of the news. Sometimes that actually pays out a lot greater in the long run. So looking at NASDAQ being down 21%, we had several gap downs the last few days in price, retracing all the way back to these major support zones. So just kind of circling them off here, and now price interacting with that same area. So this overall is, if we're going to have a bounce, this is the zone you'd be expecting a bounce. This is essentially a long, I would open a long in this scenario here if I were trading stocks, thinking that usually the first test of a major support, you are going to get quite a reaction off of that. And when you do look at the time from the all-time high to when we first were breaking out above this area, it's essentially 270 days. So 3/4 of a year of upward price action, all retraced in, a month. Wow. So typically when you have these 20% massive corrections or crashes, I guess in stocks 20% is a crash, you are looking to scoop a bottom at some point and essentially at least try for a bounce before heading lower. If you just break here and break all structure altogether, then I do think you are headed down to this former high that was formed here before this consolidation phase. And that zone comes in around 15,000 on the NAS. So keep that in mind. If you do lose these lows, I would be looking for that target, but that essentially is another 7% move on top of that. Will we receive a 30% correction all in one blow? I do think that's unlikely. I think at the very least, especially going into Monday, Monday's typically a bullish day, you do get some sort of reactionary bounce. So moving away from the NASDAQ into the S&P 500. So on SPX, we have a similar pocket of support here and here that we are now coming in to test. This is essentially a range, if I can find the right tool to show you, essentially from this bottom to this wick here, and that's where I would draw the range. Anything in here to me is a buy zone for the S&P, and you'd be looking at some sort of reactionary bounce before some form of consolidation or trying to reverse. So Those are the higher turn time frames for the stock market. And the reason I want to bring those into focus is because when we go back to Bitcoin here, we can see Bitcoin has retraced substantially in comparison to those assets. When we go from top to current price level, 26%. I was actually expecting something greater, to be honest. Normally when stocks are down 20%, Bitcoin is down 50%. But that's what I'm getting at with this is normally Bitcoin bleeds a lot more heavily. And in this instance, ever since the ETFs, Bitcoin has essentially been trading more like a stock and less like a volatile cryptocurrency. So that being said, there is the argument that the major highs where we consolidated and formed this 6-month sideways consolidation. Sorry, I got the wrong tool here. Let me just show this consolidation here, where we went sideways for 6 months and chopped up and down. That never got back tested when we broke out in this upward parabolic movement. So price coming down to at least these highs here, and it is where we actually broke out from. To me, anywhere there or where we back tested this whole channel, drawing another line here, anywhere in this zone is where I think price could form a bottom before consolidating, going sideways, and then finding a point to reverse. So if Bitcoin, or if stocks rather, is any indication as to where Bitcoin is headed, then I do think these coming weeks, days, essentially, price could get quite nasty. We could see a very, very sharp decline very quickly on Bitcoin if we lose these major lows here. We also spoke about on previous videos, essentially RSI being above this region here, the 43 read would be bullish structure, but RSI hasn't really gained momentum around this zone. It's kind of stayed here, and to me, between 50 and 40 is more of a neutral zone. So breaking back below, which when we zoom in, it appears as if we actually are about to break back below. Breaking back below is going to be quite bearish overall, and I would expect to see quite aggressive downside should this be confirming going into Monday's price action. So keep that in mind. Keep this structure in the back of your mind when trading. If you are still active in Bitcoin, essentially DCAing around these regions, around these lows, are all very good buys. But if we are breaking back down below this former high, around 74K, essentially I would think that the price needs to go sideways at the very least for some time before it decides what it's going to do next in the market. And if we do go below those levels around 74K, I think something else is at play. I think the top is in Bitcoin, and this is why we need to mark out these scenarios so that we're prepared for further downside in our portfolio. This kind of decides whether or not we're in cash or we're in long positions. And as of right now, I essentially would be looking to buy the dip and look for some type of dead cat bounce before the lower high potentially takes place, confirming the bear market. But all in all, I think going into next week, we should still see some pressure to the downside. If stocks bounce, then it would be an indication that Bitcoin could bounce. And if we go on to lower time frames here, we can see on the 4-hour that we do have a nice level of support on the 4-hour that Bitcoin looks like it's going to reach on this Sunday. Sunday price action, I really don't see much merit, much validity to, because oftentimes Sunday price action gets reversed right away on Monday as buyers are typically stepping into the market. So if we do get some sort of harsh sell-off the rest of the day, I sound like the Grinch, then look for price essentially to form a bottom on these wicks. That would be your triple tap, and that would be your sign of a reversal, and to at least challenge these highs on the 4-hour, maybe even reclaiming this 90K zone. That is the only bullish scenario for me. If Bitcoin reclaims 90K, then I would be looking long. I would be looking for the next fib extension. I would be looking probably for all-time highs. But without Bitcoin reclaiming 90K, with just fake outs around that zone, ultimately priority is still bearish to the downside, essentially continuance from today's price action. So that is going to do it for Bitcoin on the daily and the 4-hour. So those are both the bearish and bullish scenarios in play currently. I think it's quite favorable to the downside, especially with these rejections and long wicks trying to get to that 90K region and unable to reclaim it, unable to become bullish posturing on the RSI. All these things are confluence as to why I think there is further downside in the market. If I bring up market cipher here, essentially this would be your only indication that we could go bullish. If we see this momentum wave print another green dot, then you would have money flow curling up and the momentum waves coming up. Then I would say that's where you're going to get the triple tap in play on the 4-hour and the reversal, and then you could essentially swing trade that on shorter term time frames. Not financial advice, of course, but that's going to do it for Bitcoin on the daily and 4-hour time frames. So hopefully you've seen value in this video. If you do, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really does help out the algorithm and help me grow. Leave a comment. Let me know if you want to see any specific altcoins in the future, and I can drop a video for you on those. So that's going to do it for me. Crypto Neil signing off. We'll see you in the next one.